am the owner of Clearfork Press out of Stanford, Texas, and I am joined today by one of my very favorite people to do editing with, and that is Jessica Musgrove. And Jessica, I'm going to let you introduce the book that just came out and tell a little bit about it. I know all about it, but obviously the people that are either watching or listening to it have no clue. So just give us a little bit of a what is it about and what's the name? We haven't even started with the name. First of all, what is the name of this wonderful book? And also, who's your target audience for this book?
Yes, so my book is a middle grade Christian fantasy titled Evergreen and the Silver Tree. It's geared for, I would say, the readability is for as young as age 8 all the way through 14 to 16 years of age. And really, if you just love a good fantasy book, then, this book is obviously for you. But the main character is Evergreen, and she's 17 years old. And 10 years after the disappearance of her first grade classmates, Evergreen is haunted by the cold case. Then she's driven by the persistent echoes of a boy's scream for help that rattles her mind so much that she has to venture down to the cavern where her friends mysteriously vanished. There in the darkness, she finds a portal and is thrust into the enchanted realm of Ezra City, where she meets friendly gnomes living in tree houses, plant-like prophetic sprites, mountain muses, talking sparrows, and goblins that hide in this beguiling forest. It's there that she meets her friends that have been gone all these years, and she's overjoyed until she learns that a tyrant dragon king has erased their memories and replaced them with false memories of a life never lived. And it's her task to essentially fulfill this ancient prophecy and lead all creatures in a battle for freedom and restore truth to her lost classmates. And so as she's going about her journey, she meets the tyrant dragon king's faithful servant, and she is filled with disgust for him at first until she learns that he may be the only one who can help unravel the lies. So you're dealing with a lot of light versus darkness. You're dealing with fear, or faith over fear. Those would be like the main themes of the book. And so it's geared toward, she deals with a lot of fear, and she has to decide to either let the fear control her or to rise above it and step into her calling.
Yeah, I'm going to make myself big because I made you spotlight. Now I don't know how to make you spotlight.
It moved from me being small to
yeah. I was just trying to spotlight because nobody wants to look at me while you're talking. So I will just follow up that this is middle grade, which is one of my very, I have been a big pusher of middle grade over the last few years, and really I have fallen in love with this age group for kids because I feel like this is kind of when they're figuring out a lot of who they are, and it's a this is a hard time. You're talking mainly about junior high, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, kids, and I love that age group. I have such a heart for that age group because my son had such a hard time during that period. But I like the point that you make, that really anybody can read that. And that's kind of the beauty of middle grade, is that even though we're saying this is really the targeted age group, readability is such a funny thing because you can take 2 8-year-olds and they may not really read the same level of book. And I feel like the same for adults. Some adults really enjoy reading middle grade and younger YA because they're fast reads. So we can all kind of identify with that. And I will also put the mark on this for parents, because I know that sometimes it's hard to find, if you have not personally read the book, you don't know if you want to buy that book for your child. And that's a very big thing. And I think that's why we are seeing more book banning coming in, is because people just aren't sure like what books contain. And then somebody tells them that that book contains something, but they haven't personally read it. So they don't have an idea. But this is a very, very good book for really any age. And you would not have a problem with like she said, an 8-year-old reading it and up. It's not one of those books that has some places where you might want to like put it. We used to put the paper clip. My mother used to read some of them, and she put the paper clip like, you can't read these pages. I don't know if your mother ever did that, but my mother did that. And so there's no paper clips needed in this book. It's very wholesome all the way through, and there is no it is very much in the spirit of, I would totally recommend it to any age child, even if you had a younger child that was reading at an 8-year-old level. I think there are some things they could get out of it. For me, and I always love to kind of give like a little like, why did I acquire this book? Like, why is this a Clear Fork? And this is actually under our &MG imprint. But why is it a book that I decided that I wanted to work on? And for me, it reminded me so much of the Chronicles of Narnia, which was such a wonderful series. And I know, Jessica, you've also talked in depth about this, about how that was also a heart. And I always go back to this C.S. Lewis, who famously was an atheist, and then wrote the Chronicles of Narnia and some other wonderful books that are timeless and have been read for many years. But there was one thing that he actually, I think it's in one of the Narnia books, and I think Aslan says it, and Aslan is the lion of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, if you've never read the books. And he says that that they ask him at one point why they have to go into this fantasy world instead of knowing him in their everyday world where they live in London or England. And he looks at them and he says, I brought you into this world so that you may know me in a better way. And like, and so I think that's kind of, I mean, you may disagree with this, Jessica, but I think that this is something that could be very well said about Evergreen, about how it very much takes that vein of like, I am going to teach you about faith, and I'm going to teach you about these things, but I'm not going to hit you over the head with it. I'm going to let you come to your own conclusions about it. And I remember loving the Chronicles of Narnia for that, because I was a very blossoming Christian at that point and was kind of a sponge. And I remember just going on these rabbit holes of like, okay, is this supposed to be parallel to this? And there's actually a book that was written that tells you all the parallels in the Chronicle of Narnia books. But did you feel that same way? I know you did, but
Definitely.
really, how present was that as you were writing the books?
Well, and I can say, so I grew up not only reading C.S. Lewis, but also watching. There's like this old version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Which are personally my favorite.
Yeah.
The older versions are personally my favorite, and I think it's because of my age, because they did come out when I was probably an original watcher, where you saw them like they were probably like 10 years old when you saw them,
Yes, I was young, and I think it was I think it just goes back to like nostalgia, because I was, at that perfect age of like being middle grade when I watched it and having this big imagination. And I used to play pretend outside, even if it was just me completely by myself. I would like pretend like I was all of the characters. And anyway, yeah, I've always been drawn to fantasy, and I think that fantasy is just a wonderful escape. It's like, yes, you're escaping into this different world, but you can also teach truths, you can teach lessons in an escape, in an adventure. And so I think that's one of the main things that always drew me in, because I know that back when I was watching The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe over and over and over again, that the lion Aslan, who represents Jesus,
Yeah.
always filled me with such hope and such
Oh,
joy.
I
And
loved him. I don't know about you, but I loved him. Like
Mhm.
I had a very deep, um, like I remember why I read all of the books, of course, which are better than the movies, especially because if you've read the books, you know that like Prince Caspian has a much bigger story than they do in the
Yes.
movies, and he was one of my favorites. So I was really glad that I was glad about that, but I always was sad that they didn't do that in the older movies. But I did you I just always felt like when he came into the book, like when he was on the scene, my heart was just like, what you got to say? What what you gonna say? That's the way I felt.
Right.
And
Right. Well, it's yes, it always filled me with such hope. And I think that that's one of the main words that I think, like, me as a writer and even just me as a person kind of focuses on, is the word hope, and the fact that there's hope found in Christ alone, which is what I portray through this book, which kind of, it doesn't really copy C.S. Lewis, but it um, it goes off the premise that, like, if a different world did exist, that God, who is the creator of this realm of planet Earth, was also the creator of Ezra City, which is, my fantasy land, and he would have also been the creator of Narnia, and and so it follows that premise, and so it's not that there really is an Aslan figure. There's really just God, and there's really God's Son, Jesus, and so but there are definitely moments in the book where his power is revealed to these characters who, are going through dark moments, or going through moments of struggle, and they are, crying out for help. And he shows up in some really mighty ways, as Aslan does in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I yes, I would totally agree. So let's take a step back and really talk about there are two characters that I would really love to talk about the most, and then we can kind of touch on some of the, like, secondary characters. But for me, of course, Evergreen is up front and named in the book, is in the title. But actually, before we get to Evergreen, for me, the most complex character, and I know you're already probably guessing who I'm talking about, but for me, in the as far as like the trajectory of this character and how they evolved and stuff, was Henry and Hickory, and like where that. And so what was your, like, and you never want to pick favorites out of your characters because they're like your children, and I know this too because I also have this problem sometimes. But like when you were developing the character of Henry or Hickory, or which, I mean, he has a few different names that he's referred to in few different places in the book, and um you don't really put all the pieces together, right away of who he actually is. But what were your like, okay, my first question is, did you have more fun creating the character arc for Henry or Evergreen?
Okay, this is actually probably easier for me to answer, maybe, than it should be. I mean, I love Evergreen, and she is the main character. But I will tell you why. So yes, Henry and Hickory are the same character. Just for so no one gets confused.
Yeah,
Henry and
yeah,
Hickory
if you haven't read the
are
book, yeah.
But Henry was definitely my favorite story arc to write. and I don't want to reveal too much. I don't want to give too much away, but he is a character who goes through much conflict, circumstantial conflict and inner conflict. And so I guess to make a long story short, he is tormented. He is definitely falls prey to the villain, falls prey to the Dragon King. And but his character arc from going from hopeless to, potentially a little more hopeful, is one that was very, very fun to write. And I think I can say that he's my favorite because I love the characters who struggle the most, because they're relatable, and also just kind of fun to write with, because like getting into that headspace and not making it easy for your characters, is a good thing. I think that bodes well for a story to really have action and to kind of like suck the reader in. And really his character just sucked me in, because it was almost like, as I was writing him, that he was telling the story, and I was writing it. So
But I would agree. I would really agree with that, because for me, that was what intrigued me about him. That kind of thing, because I felt like it is Evergreen's story, but I do feel like Henry is really, in a lot of places, the one that is telling us the story and really driving the story. And I found, and I'm always I'm always up for a good redemption story. Like I mean, that's what I'm about. I will tell you every time that I will geek out on characters forever. And and he is definitely one that I felt like I geeked out a lot and kind of watched his character. What are we doing now? And so I love how you answered that, because I think that you have perfectly worded what I think is really the way that I would have probably, not as eloquently as you, but probably have said too. But
well, and I just to piggyback off of that, he's a character who has a lot of, he's got a dry and rugged exterior,
mhm.
but is
But
like,
he
if you
didn't
read the
start
book,
that
is it
way.
really who he is?
Yeah,
Right, so you have to, he's got, what is it like in Shrek, where Shrek says, like, it's like an
like
onion,
an
like you
onion.
pull back the layers. He's one of those complex characters, like you pull
Yeah,
back more layers and then you understand him more and more.
yeah. Which honestly, I feel like those are the people that intrigue you the most. They're the people that you usually meet and you make a face value assumption about them, and then you realize that you may have not, it's not that you have misjudged, but there was more to the story than really was that first impression. And so I really, really love that part of the story. So now we've kind of talked about like the big main characters that really are kind of the ones that really, in my opinion, drive the story. But then, are there any of the secondary characters that you really um also fell in love with and also had like a soft spot for? I had one that was kind of my thing. I think I may have told you, and if I had an author a few years ago that I had, one of his people in his story was my favorite character ever. And I was like so in love with this character, and it was a trilogy story. So I had really rooted for this story. And when he handed me the third book, he had written, please forgive me. You're gonna know. And and I finally got to the point at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he had killed that character. But he did give him a good death. I mean, like there was a trade-off. But I sent him a message and I said, I really think we might need to go to therapy over this. So I'm gonna, was there one that you kind of had, like a similar
Oh yes.
thing?
There's more than one. Well, okay, so to go back to Evergreen's character, the main character, I don't want to make it sound like, she's not interesting, because she is. She's one of those kinds of heroines who, she is not, this warrior. She doesn't start out as this one who like knows how to pick up a sword, knows how to fight, can shoot a bow and arrow, perfectly. She's not that type of character. She is a normal teenage girl who, was going to prom in, previous chapters, and then all of a sudden is in this, fantasy land, away from her parents, away from everything that she knows. And so she definitely, I would say, is the most relatable character, because she's just like us, and
Yeah.
you're learning everything with her. You're walking with her, and meeting all these creatures with Evergreen for the most part. And
Yeah.
so, in Evergreen's story, there are two characters that I would focus on. One character, who is a more minor secondary character. Her name is Leaflet, and she is one of the lost classmates. Leaflet is her tree name. So if you read the book, you'll realize that the characters who were her first grade classmates, they all go by tree names now, and not really their human real world names. But Leaflet is the fun, spunky, frenemy character, and she adds conflict in a way of, making Evergreen not feel welcome, mistrusting her, um, you know, thinking that she's kind of better than Evergreen, because she has that kind of spunky personality. But along with that spunkiness, she has a lot of heart, a lot of boldness, and she's one character that's like, you don't want to mess around with her, but at the same time, like, if she has your back, she has your back.
Right.
And so she's that type of fun character. The other character that I love so much is a gnome named Paul. And Paul is the leader of the gnomes. It's one of the first people that Evergreen meets in the realm of Ezra City, who absolutely, like, opposite of Leaflet, welcomes her in and becomes a very grandfatherly figure toward her.
Mhm.
And he is the one who encourages her, because he knows that she's there to fulfill a prophecy. He knows who she is, even though she's trying to hide her identity from the rest of the
Yeah.
people. He sees straight through that. And he, in just the most tender way, encourages her, hey, you are here for a purpose, and your strength is not your own. It comes from the Lord, who is the pure one in their realm. And so he's one of the most encouraging characters. And I think you will fall in love with this, short and stout, gnome, jolly gnome character.
Yeah. For me, it was Holly.
Oh yes, I love Holly too.
Yeah, Holly was a surprise for me because for a while, I've recently read a book, and I won't call it out by name because I wouldn't probably give it a very favorable review, but it had 5 point of view characters, and one of the characters was just not really didn't contribute anything to the story. Like it was just, I always tried to kind of figure out, like, why are they even in this? Like they just didn't seem to serve a purpose. They didn't seem to like give you additional information or anything. And in fact, I've kind of felt the fact that it was just that they were a point of view character. If they had just been like kind of a background character, it'd probably been fine. But I kind of felt like it slowed the action of the story down so much that I didn't really enjoy the story. And so Holly was one of those that I was kind of watching. like to see like what is her place going to be? Like, what is her contribution? Why is she here? Is there a purpose? And she has such a beautiful, I felt like her like arc was kind of this very beautiful thing. And to me, I kind of had like this little bit of a sweet spot for her. I think just because I was watching her so close to see, is she a good fit for the story, or what do we need to do? And she was great. Like, it was obvious why she was there, because I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, but I loved Holly. She was probably my favorite.
Yeah. And I loved writing Holly too, because she adds, almost in places, a comic relief. I would say she, not only I mean, her character is funky too, but in a different way from Leaflet. Holly exudes confidence and joy, and is definitely a friend to Evergreen, which you'll see. But
Right.
she is just, she's one of those characters. I feel like she's kind of like a stream in a desert land, type of friend. And I think she's that way in the book too, like in the plot of the book. I think you'll just quickly fall in love with her, even though it's not that she's in the book like tons and tons and tons, but she's a good aid to the story.
She is. She really does. She has a good, her arc is very beneficial to the story overall. So is there going to be more books in the series?
Yes, I am working on the sequel now, and when it's all said and done, it'll be a trilogy. So I'm working on book 2 now, and that's also very fun fun to write. And yeah, I can't really give anything away,
Right.
but I can say that you will see even new creatures and new aspects of the world than you see in book 1. And so yeah.
Did you feel like, do you feel like it's different writing the second book, having the first one published?
Um, yes, I would say it's different because um, there is a different character that becomes, like, he's a very minor character in the first book, and he becomes a main character in the second book, without losing the main characters from the first book either. So it's not like you get rid of Evergreen and you get rid of Henry, but you will also have more characters that are developed from the first book. And so exploring his character is, kind of new waters for me. But he's also one that is quite fun and quite complex, like Henry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that I can't wait to see what happens and where this is going to go, because it is, I really enjoy, when you read a lot of books, sometimes it's each book is unique, but then sometimes it's really hard for it to have a really unique aspect, like like the begin the and I guess it's probably more like the backstory, like jumping off point. Sometimes that is very similar in a lot of books. For Evergreen, I felt like it was such an original, and not it was a great, like, jumping off point, but it was also one that I don't know if I've ever seen done that way. And that was something that really drew me in and hooked me in, to the story. And so I think that uniqueness is something else to enjoy, with it. I'd also like, even though we're talking about Evergreen today, and before we shift into this next part, I will mention that Evergreen is available on the Clear Fork Press website. It is available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes and Noble. It's available in flies are crazy right now in Texas. Um, it is available in ebook across those, and we have some really big news coming up with Clear Fork that's going to launch after the beginning of the year, and so there will be some more places that Evergreen will kind of find her way into, so I'm really excited about that. But those, if you're interested in like right now just grabbing that, those are the places you can go to get your copy. And so now we're going to shift for a second from Evergreen, which again, it has been a wonderful project and I've really enjoyed. And I know that it has been, for me, it's almost been a little like editing candy, if that makes sense. Like in a way, like it's like something, because I edit a lot of stuff and I enjoy everything that I edit. But in this case, it was something that I, as a child, grew up loving. Like it's a concept that as a child, grew up loving. So while I was editing and talking with you about Evergreen and especially developing out the beginning of the book, because that was something that we really had a lot of discussion about. It didn't feel like work because it was so much just a return, like almost an ode to my childhood,
Right.
and so I
Same here.
really, really enjoyed that. And I'm so appreciative, Jessica, that you allowed me to be part of that journey, because it was I can't wait to continue to be part of that journey, but that was such a wonderful journey as our first project together. So now that kind of springboards into the next thing. So are you ready to kind of announce what our second project together is going to be?
Oh yes.
This is one that I am also very, very passionate about and very excited about, and am very much looking forward to the editing and the getting this out, because it's also something that I feel very passionate about. And so Jessica, again, I'm going to kind of let you kind of take the reins on this and describe the book and what the name of the book is and where that is, who the targeted reader, because we are now switching from a middle grade that was part of our and MG print to a different imprint that we have, which is the Rise imprint, which, if you're not familiar with, is all about empowering and celebrating and carries a lot of faith-based content, although it doesn't always have to be faith-based. But I really feel like it's books that feed your soul is kind of the intent of the Rise imprint. So Jessica, what is our second book together?
So the second book is called Instruments of Hope, and it focuses on women of the Bible. And so basically, it's for women, and I would say ages, like 20 to through 30s, in any young woman. Um, and so, yeah, it focuses on women of the Bible, specifically women of the Bible that I have read about and, through my own quiet times that I have related to. And so really it comes down to, like, if you struggle with, anxiousness, if you struggle with fear, if you struggle even with things like, depression, like your mental health, like I could share, testimonies in, my personal struggles with that, but it goes down to, like, the Lord using these women who have also struggled, who have also cried out to the Lord for help, who have also, even amidst trials, walked in obedience to what the Lord is calling them to do, and have experienced joy because of it. And so, yeah, it just relates to these women. I relate to these women, and I share, like, some of my own personal testimony, almost like memoir, like excerpts along with these women that you read about. And so, yeah, it's devotional style. So, it begins with a question to think about, and then it ends with a reflection, and you get to actually dive into the word at the same time as you're reading the book too. So yeah, they started out as blog posts originally that I was writing just at work, and because I work at a church, and so and then nothing really kind of happened for a while with that. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take this and make it into a more readable book, for young women to read.
Yeah. And I love this because I love and have read many books about women of the Bible, and they sometimes we know a lot about them and we've talked a lot about it, but sometimes there are names that we kind of know, but we really don't know like what their struggle was. And I remember, I've told you this too, Jessica, like when I was a new mom, I think it was right after Ben was born, I did a study that was about the women of Abraham's time instead of the men. And that Bible study had such a profound effect on me, because I had never looked at those women. I knew their story. I mean, we all, if you're a Christian and you grew up in the church, we all kind of know the story of Sarah and Rebecca and these women and know their names and how things went, but we really don't actually know their story. And I just, it fascinated me how when you took these women and you made them human and you learned about their struggles and why they made the decisions they did, that they really weren't that different from us.
Right.
And there was so much to learn from them. And so I um I am very excited to work on this project and get it out in the world because I it's such a I always love when you can take something that you think you know everything about and give it more and see it in a different light. And I really feel like that is what this book will do, is really touch people's hearts in a different way that they didn't even realize. Um,
Well, and it's because these are real people. I mean, that these
yeah,
were real people. And so one of the things that I really tried to do was kind of essentially break it down verse by verse, and in that kind of way, like leave room for you as the reader, and even as me, just stepping into their shoes,
right.
to really understand, like, how might they have felt in a circumstance like this, and not to say that, like, there might be, some speculation here and there, but I don't let that steal away from the truth that's in scripture. So, it's all to help you as the reader, relate and understand that, like, okay, this happened in biblical times. Maybe here's another scenario in, like, real life that could make you feel like this
That's
character.
like, yeah. I mean, and I mean, I think that you're absolutely right, is that sometimes we forget that the people in the Bible were real people, that they were people just like us, that were living their life, and they, they made decisions, they made, things outside of their control affected them. They had wars, they lived through death and grief and all sorts of different things. And we just forget that. Like I think sometimes we just think of them as like people that we take out and we watch a movie on them and then we put them back in and oh, that was interesting. Like I don't know. But I just can't wait to dive in and I'm very excited about that. And so that will be our next project together and then we'll be back with the sequel to Evergreen. So before we close this out, Jessica, I'm just going to go on and make sure that we are not missing any comments that have been made um on the video because I don't want us to miss, you know, anything in it. from my perspective, it does not look like anybody has commented on the video, but if you are listening to this and you did comment and I just can't see it, please just reach out to me. I will tag Jessica in the video on Facebook when I pop over, and feel free to, if we see the comment, we'll try to get back to you and stuff. So instruments of hope will be, gosh, I'm drawing a complete blank, Jessica. I know we have done the timeline for it, but what do you remember? Do you remember when we were looking at it? I don't have my thing in front of. I mean, probably sometime this next year is kind of what
Next year, I would say, well, because we should. I am still writing just a bit for
yeah.
the book, and so that should be finished by the end of this year, which means editing can take place, and I foresee that going pretty quick. So
Yeah.
I would say maybe mid next year or
Yeah.
so.
I think that I was thinking somewhere in my mind that we had talked about edits were going to start right after Christmas, but I could not remember for the life of me when we had set, and it has been a long day. But I'm so glad to see you, Jessica, and have this time with you. And it's always nice to talk with you and celebrate your book. And you should be very proud of it. It is something that I am very proud to be a part of, and I know that you are too. And I don't know if I was going to see if we could bring up the cover real fast of Evergreen, because I really love it. Let me see.
Yes, and you designed the artwork for the cover, so let that be known that you're my publisher and my illustrator. So
which was actually very, very fun to be part of, because I have I mean, I do a lot of graphic work, but it had been a while since I had done something on this scale. And I just I think I remember before we got to this one, I said something about like it doesn't have the wow factor, and I'm waiting for the wow factor. And I have another cover that we may actually want, a cover that I created for Evergreen that we had actually talked about using as part of the Instruments of Hope, which I think is so funny because it's in a very similar, it's with similar color things. But here is the beautiful cover. And I do love it because I think it creates this intrigue of her, like what's going to happen,
it's whimsical to
Yeah.
me. So it just captures the tone of the book perfectly.
Yeah. I really, really love it. And when we were at WriterCon and you had the copies, they were just seeing them in person. And I know you probably had the same thing. And it was just like, I'm so proud of this. I'm so proud that my name is associated with this, and I'm proud of every book baby. But so I don't mean to take away from anybody else's, but I did have a lot of pride that day when I saw you standing there and your husband being so wonderfully supportive, and
Yes.
and